Every morning you wake up and hit repeat. The familiar routine, persistent problems, and predictable excuses about why today isn't your day to chase what truly matters. Picture it: alarm, coffee, commute, trapped in a loop of sameness. But when was the last time comfort actually made you happy? Here's the truth that most motivational speakers won't tell you. Comfort is the enemy of growth. Your dream job, relationship, or body isn't hiding in your comfort zone. It's waiting just beyond it. And nothing changes if you don't make the decision to step out of what feels safe. What if I told you that tomorrow is the most expensive word in your vocabulary? It costs you dreams, opportunities, and the life you were meant to live. The price tag isn't measured in dollars and cents, but in moments that will never return and versions of yourself you'll never meet. We've become masters of postponement. I'll start my business next year. I'll have that difficult conversation when the timing is better. I'll pursue my passion when I have more money saved. These statements sound reasonable, prudent even. But look around at your life right now. How many of those tomorrows from 5 years ago are still waiting their turn? The truth cuts deep. A palliative care nurse named Bronnie Ware spent years recording the top regrets of the dying, their greatest sorrow, the life they never lived. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. People don't mourn their failures, they mourn their hesitations, the moments when fear disguised as logic whispered, "Wait," and they listened. Every time you say tomorrow, you're making a withdrawal from your life's potential. These aren't small deductions, they compound. One postponed dream becomes 5 years of settling. One delayed conversation becomes a lifetime of resentment. Your identity slowly shifts from a person of action to a person of intention, from someone who does to someone who merely wishes. There's a psychological principle at work called temporal discounting. Your brain values immediate rewards over future benefits, even when the future benefits are objectively greater. That's why watching another episode feels better than working on your side hustle, even though that side hustle could transform your financial future. Your brain literally discounts the value of your future self's success. The cost of inaction is an invisible ledger most people never calculate. We're taught to weigh the risks of action. What if I fail? What if I'm embarrassed? What if I lose money? But we rarely consider the cost of doing nothing, which towers above these concerns. The promotion never received, the relationship never experienced, the impact never made. Consider John, a man I met who always wanted to write a novel. He had the story in his head for 20 years. When the kids are older, he told himself. Then, when I retire. Then, when I'm settled into retirement. At 78, he finally sat down to write, only to discover early onset dementia had begun to erase the very story he'd held onto for decades. The right time never announced itself. It was always now, but he couldn't see it. Your brain creates justifications that sound completely reasonable. I need more experience first. I need to research more. I need to wait until I'm ready. These aren't wise precautions. They're fear wearing a mask. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of discovering that maybe you're not as special as you hope. And your brain, wanting to protect you, wraps this fear in logical-sounding excuses. Your dreams don't disappear when postponed. They transform into regrets. They harden into what-ifs that haunt quiet moments for the rest of your life. And perhaps most devastating, you teach everyone watching you, your children, your friends, your community, that dreams are things you talk about but don't pursue. Your postponement becomes their permission to do the same. While postponement robs you of your future, Your comfort zone is silently assassinating your potential in the present. But here's something most people never realize. That feeling of resistance when you consider making a change isn't a warning sign telling you to retreat. It's actually a compass pointing directly toward your growth. Your brain has developed a sophisticated defense system, one that can't distinguish between physical danger and emotional discomfort. When you stand at the edge of transformation, those same neural circuits that would protect you from a predator activate to save you from the unknown. This is your comfort zone at work, confining you rather than protecting you. From a neurological perspective, your comfort zone is about familiarity, not comfort. Your brain craves the predictable because predictability meant survival for our ancestors. But we're no longer running from saber-toothed tigers. We're running from our own potential. I know a talented photographer who worked at a corporate job for 15 years. Every day she complained about her position, dreaming of pursuing her passion professionally. When a friend offered to help launch her business, she declined. "I need the security," she said. 5 years later, she watches that same friend's thriving photography studio with quiet regret, still sitting in the same cubicle, still complaining about the same things. This is the comfort zone deception at work. That sense of security your brain manufactures becomes the greatest threat to your fulfillment. Comfort disguises itself as wisdom, whispering, "Don't rock the boat," calling it prudence, murmuring, "You're not ready yet," labeling it discernment. These are sophisticated excuses designed to keep you stationary. Your comfort zone reveals itself through patterns of behavior that keep you stuck. You engage in constant comparison, measuring your progress against others to justify inaction. You fall into chronic complaining, rehearsing the same grievances about your circumstances without taking action. And you develop consistent excuses, an arsenal of reasons why now isn't the right time, why you don't have enough resources, or why someone else should take the lead. God doesn't design you for comfort. He designs you for purpose. The uncomfortable truth is that God often plants dreams in our hearts that require us to grow beyond our current capabilities. Divine callings aren't meant to fit neatly within your existing skills and resources. They're meant to stretch you, demand faith, and require growth. Let me ask you something personal. Are you truly where you want to be right now? Not where others expect you to be, not where your fears have confined you, but where your soul longs to exist. Nothing is going to change if you don't change it. That discomfort you feel when considering a different path is a green light, not a red one. It's saying go, not stop. If it's important enough to do tomorrow, it's important enough to do today. But comfort has convinced you that later is just as good as now. It isn't. Each day you remain in the familiar prison of your comfort zone. You actively choose to reject the calling placed on your life. The comfort zone feels safe, but it's actually where dreams go to die a slow, quiet death. So quiet you hardly notice them fading. It's the place where someday becomes never, without you even realizing the transition happened. It's where potential calcifies into regret. Fear doesn't announce itself with sirens and warning signs. It whispers in your ear like a trusted advisor, telling you to be careful when God is calling you to be courageous. That voice of fear isn't protecting your potential, it's imprisoning it. When you stand at the edge of change, 3 primary fears emerge to hold you back. The fear of failure grips you first, that terrifying thought that your efforts will end in humiliation, with judgment and shame following close behind. This quickly feeds into the fear of inadequacy, where your mind convinces you that you simply lack what the challenge requires. And as these doubts multiply, they open the door to perhaps the most paralyzing fear of all, the unknown, that dark forest of uncertainty where the path ahead disappears into shadows. I remember standing at the edge of launching my ministry. My hands trembled holding the phone as I made calls to potential venues. Each rejection strengthened that voice saying, "You're not ready for this." The paralysis was real. These fears create a powerful immobilization. They transform hesitation into virtue, recasting your resistance as wisdom. "I'm just being responsible," you tell yourself. But what if that cautious voice isn't wisdom at all? What if it's merely fear in disguise? Let me tell you something. The most successful people you admire aren't fearless superhumans. They experience the same cold sweat, racing heart, and nagging doubts that you do. The difference isn't in what they feel, it's in what they do despite those feelings. They've discovered that waiting for fear to disappear before taking action is like waiting for the ocean to be still before learning to swim. Tim Ferriss, who struggled with debilitating anxiety, developed fear setting. Instead of just imagining success, he looks his worst fears directly in the eye. He writes down all the terrible things that could happen, then details exactly how he would respond if they actually occurred. This practice reveals something profound. Most of what terrifies us isn't actually fatal. It's uncomfortable, yes, embarrassing perhaps, but survivable. God, what if you're asking me to step into these waters for a reason? This question changes everything. The Bible repeatedly shows that faith requires movement. Remember the Israelites at the Jordan River. The waters didn't part until the priests stepped in. Their feet had to get wet before the miracle happened. God parts waters when feet get wet, not before. When you start taking action, even imperfect, messy action, momentum builds. Each small step drowns out the voice of fear that once paralyzed you. You become too busy moving forward to hear all the reasons to turn back. Think about Peter in that storm-tossed boat. He didn't wait until he felt confident enough to walk on water. He stepped out while the waves were still crashing. His courage wasn't in the absence of fear. It was in his decision that reaching Jesus mattered more than the fear of drowning. Your journey works the same way. The path forward isn't about eliminating fear. It's about promoting something else above it. When that purpose grows bigger than your fear, your feet will start moving almost automatically. The antidote to fear isn't confidence. Confidence comes later, after you've acted despite your trembling. The real antidote is simple courage, the decision to take one step, then another, with knees knocking and voice shaking. It's choosing to be afraid and move forward anyway. That first step, oh, that terrifying, beautiful first step, it's where the miracle hides. Have you ever noticed how God rarely parts waters before you step into them? There's something sacred about that moment, when your foot leaves solid ground and touches the uncertain path ahead. Something happens in the universe that cannot happen any other way. Let me share something powerful with you. God can't steer a parked car. You can pray until your knees are raw, meditate until your mind is clear, and plan until your strategy is flawless. But nothing moves until you do. It's in that courageous first step that the divine collaboration begins. I've seen this truth play out time and again in the lives of those who finally committed to change. Think about that person who walked away from their college degree, a decision that looked like failure to everyone watching. Their parents called it irresponsible. Their friends called it crazy, but something inside them knew they needed clarity more than credentials. That apparent step backward became the first step toward discovering their true passion for psychology, a path that would never have emerged if they'd stayed on the conventional route. When you publicly commit to a decision, something shifts in your brain. You become more likely to follow through, to take actions that align with that initial choice. Making that first declaration creates an internal obligation to honor your word. not just to others, but to yourself. The most beautiful part: you don't need to see the entire staircase before taking that first step. We paralyze ourselves believing we need perfect clarity before we move. What if I make the wrong choice? What if I regret it? These questions keep us frozen, analyzing instead of acting. But hear this truth: clarity comes from movement, not meditation. You will learn more about yourself, your purpose, and your path in 1 week of imperfect action than in 1 year of perfect planning. The universe reveals the second step only after you've taken the first. Nothing changes until you do. This simple truth contains the essence of personal transformation. We wait for circumstances to shift, for other people to change, for the perfect moment to arrive. But the catalyst has always been you. Have you felt how the universe seems to conspire in your favor once you fully commit? Resources you never knew existed suddenly become available. People appear in your life at exactly the right moment. Opportunities that were invisible before suddenly stand right in front of you. We dramatically overestimate the dangers of change while severely underestimating the cost of standing still. We fear the unknown road ahead without recognizing that the familiar path is leading us nowhere. God meets us in motion, not in endless contemplation, not in perfect understanding. He meets us when we take that shaky first step, knees knocking, voice trembling, but heart determined. The waters don't part until feet get wet. The manna doesn't fall until you're in the wilderness. The guidance doesn't come until you're already on the journey. When you finally make that decision to change, when you stop asking what if and start saying, let's find out, transformation becomes inevitable. And most miraculously, the person you were meant to be begins to take shape right before your eyes. Tonight, when you stand before that mirror, look deeply at your reflection. That face tells a story of who you've been and who you've chosen to become through every decision, hesitation, and step forward. Pause and consider this transformative truth from Dr. Wayne Dyer. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Your perception creates your reality. The mirror reflects not just your appearance, but your choices. 1 year from now, will this reflection show someone still clutching unfulfilled dreams? Or someone who embraced their divine purpose? The choice is profoundly yours. No sermon or speech can make it for you. Your reflection transforms when you do. Will tonight's reflection mark the beginning of your new journey?